I want you to think of your favorite zombies game. Maybe it's the standard Black Ops 3, or the classic of World at War. Maybe you have a wildcard take with Infinite Warfare. Though I would wager that many of you thought of Black Ops 1. And those of you who did probably had your first Zombies experience inside of that game. Today I'm going to analyze the different aspects of each map inside of BO1 in an effort to answer the question, what made it so special and does it hold up when taking off the rose-tinted glasses? Contained inside was not one, but two launch maps, the fan favorite Kino der Toten and the cult classic of 5. Most anyone who started playing in Black Ops 1 will say Kino is their most played, but really, 5 was the true launch map of the game. Taking place at the Pentagon during a Cold War era meeting between JFK, Robert McNamara, Richard Nixon, and Fidel Castro, 5 is the first map to give us a unique cast of characters outside of our Ultimus crew. JFK is definitely the fan favorite, but really all 4 have their great moments. The map itself is sectioned off into 3 distinct areas. The top floor is the most basic. It's a standard office meeting room with not much that jumps out to you, although it does contain 2 new first room weapons, the Olympia, and if you want a gun that works past round 5, the M14. After opening up the rest of the map, you can circle back here to set up the electric trap, COD Zombies' first buildable. It's nice to have as it opens up the door for high rounds, but due to the tight spaces and no easy bailout gun, you really do have to be a god amongst men to make this strategy work. When going down to the second level, you'll find the War Room. When talking about 5, this is the spot that most people are gonna be thinking about. That's because, in simple terms, this map is hard as hell, and this is the only real safe room for the average player. It provides the only training spot that you can realistically pull off, so you'll be spending most of your game here. Luckily, it is the most aesthetically pleasing part of the map, so at least you'll have some eye candy. After the War Room, one last level remains, and it's definitely the most challenging area of the map. The basement is a labyrinth of twists and turns, ready to jump scare you at pretty much any corner. The new Nova Crawlers will also spawn here. They're a slow-moving, low HP enemy that provides some variety, but they're mostly a non-factor so long as you're capable of looking down. Now that you're here in the basement, you can make your way to that power switch and flip it on. Good job. But now you have to be careful because you've awoken the first boss zombie outside of Hellhounds, and he's on the way. Later revealed to be Yuri from the Ascension group, this mad scientist will appear out of any teleporter on your floor and swipe a weapon straight from your hands. I hope you had a good secondary, because once he gets your gun, you're going to have to chase him through a maze of teleporters to try and get it back. If you can do this, you'll be rewarded with a max ammo and the newly introduced fire sale drop. But if you can stop him from getting your gun in the first place, you'll be rewarded with one of the best power-ups in COD history, the bonfire sale. Players can, and should, wait to upgrade their guns until they can get this drop, because it will discount the process from 10 down to 2,000 points. This is one of the coolest rewards and special rounds we've ever had in Zombies. The pure chaos this man causes in co-op is wild, as everyone's just teleporting around the map trying to get their gun back. One of the best ways to handle Yuri is this map's wonder weapon, the Wishbrand ray gun, or the Winter's Howl. For anything else, this thing is awful and one of the many reasons why 5 is so difficult. By the time you hit round 20, you'll be spending around half a mag, which is only 9 shots when upgraded by the way, to take out one horde. It would be offensive to refer to this gun in the same category as the Wonderwaff and Thunder Gun, the only 2 wonder weapons we've seen thus far. As time went on, 5's reputation definitely improved, with many people placing it in the upper tier of maps. Personally, I have it in my top 10. So why was it so disliked at launch? To understand that, we need to first talk about its more popular brother, Kino der Toten. Kino is the vanilla ice cream of Zombies maps. It's inoffensive, and there aren't many people whose favorite flavor is vanilla, but it's also rare to find anyone who outright hates it. Treyarch knew this, and that's why they made it available right at launch, while 5 got locked behind the campaign. Kino, in contrast to 5, has several open places to train. The main theater is the easiest and slowest, but it's also the face of the map. The spawn room is a bit faster, but you'll have to deal with a lot more of those same Nova Crawlers from 5. Lastly, the alley provides fast spawns but offers very little room for error. This map was very familiar for returning World at War players, basically acting as Darius 2.0, which makes sense as it was originally developed as DLC 4. Kino doesn't really do anything that Darius didn't, both containing the same perks and similar playstyles and map flow. The main difference being that Kino has a bit more training room and a better wonder weapon. And that wonder weapon was the legendary Thunder Gun. This bad boy is the complete package, able to blow away entire hordes in seconds, getting you out of any bad situation you might find yourself in. Place it in the Pack-a-Punch machine and get the Zeus Cannon, which doesn't make it any more powerful. There really isn't much room for improvement there, but it offers more ammo and also essentially acts as a free max ammo for the player. When you look at what the 2 maps offer, it's pretty clear to see why Treyarch wanted to push Kino as the first map you see. They wanted their returning players to feel comfortable in this new game by slightly tweaking the formula they perfected in their last game, while also giving the new ones a forgiving environment based on their most successful map to learn the game mode. If Kino was the vanilla ice cream, then 5 is the mint chocolate chip. It's both loved and hated by many, and Treyarch didn't want to risk that as the first impression of the game. As is tradition, DLC Season brought a new Zombies map for the community, and this time it was a Oh yeah, Dead Ops Arcade. This is the forgotten stepchild of the Zombies mode. This little arcade shooter was added as a bonus for players to try, most likely after dropping several tabs of acid, because that is the only way this is going to be a fun experience. It is a twin-stick, top-down shooter using imagery from the proper Zombies mode. Its controls when using any vehicle upgrade are clunky, it's hard to tell when you're going to take damage in a lot of cases, or which enemies will randomly just one-shot you. And often the Nova Crawler enemies will get lost in the background because they are the exact same color as the floor. Seriously, who thought that was a good idea? At least it's a relatively short playthrough, not infinite like Zombies, and has more of a focus on getting a higher score than your friends. Or you can play alone like me and always be on top of the platform. Dead Ops Arcade was a fun idea that suffered from poor execution, and that's all there really is to say about it. Alright, let's get back on track. DLC 1 took us to a Russian space station we know as Ascension. It's the biggest map to date, leading Ferret to introduce Stamina Up, a perk that increases the sprinting speed and duration of the player. Introduced at the same time was PhD Flopper, granting the player immunity to all explosive damage and unlocking the ability to use your belly flops to create massive explosions. When people talk about why they like PhD, often the flopper side of it actually takes second fiddle to the removal of explosive damage, and that's probably because stuff like this can happen. But even into the higher rounds, it can kill zombies pretty well if used correctly. Now, because I've known PhD was coming, I've neglected to talk about the new starter pistol until now, and that's because PhD is really what makes this weapon so iconic and powerful. When you upgrade the M1911, it becomes the Mustang and Sally. The guns in Black Ops 1, for the most part, are all really cool, though they quickly fall off in terms of damage, normally around the late 20s, but these bad boys can melt hordes of the undead even into the 50s. 14 years later, they're still the best and my personal favorite starting weapons. To unlock the aforementioned Pack-a-Punch, players need to activate and use 3 lunar landers located around the map. This is basically the cooler Daniel meme between this map and Doris. The setup and function is exactly the same, but the landers are a lot more visually pleasing. Taking a look at the bonus rounds, gone are the Hellhounds. They're replaced by Russian space monkeys that have come to take your perks and your girl. These little shits are the worst part of the map. With 4 players, they're just a non-factor and a free perk and max ammo. But during solo play, you just kinda have to accept that our monkey overlords will be taking a perk or two as sacrifice once you get all 4. On the bright side, this is the first time that players have a way to get every single perk on one map, which is something Black Ops 1 does quite often going forward. There's no new wonder weapon on this map, as Kino's Thundergun makes a return, but there is 2 new secondary weapons. First, you have the Matryoshka dolls, dealing decent damage in the low rounds, but they do quickly become obsolete. And then you have the Gersh device, an infinite damage monkey bond type grenade that is an awesome sight and also super powerful. Outside of the new perks and secondaries, Ascension's size led to a lot of what I would call dead space. This consists of mostly empty areas for the player to train and run around in, and because of this, spawns tend to be pretty slow, especially in the early games, which definitely can be frustrating at times. These dead spaces, mixed with the Thundergun and Gersh devices, create a map that is extremely easy and beginner friendly. I mean, honestly, my grandma could probably hit round 50 on this map if she tried. That's not entirely a bad thing, but it definitely impacts replayability due to its lack of challenge. Ascension's biggest innovation actually was not purely gameplay related. This is the first map to have what the community still refers to as Easter eggs, which is pretty accurate for this map, but nowadays they're more so optional full missions. There was definitely some growing pain here. A lot of the steps are nonsensical and tedious, plus the reward is literally just an extended death machine, which is entirely useless because everyone is going to be holding a crawler while they do these steps. Even with those flaws, however, it was still a really cool addition for the community, and altogether, Ascension had a relatively positive response. It introduced 2 popular perks that are still appearing in games today. The Thundergun is still one of the best wonder weapons of all time, and the map's atmosphere was top-notch. The only real complaint I and other people had about it at the time was how easy it was. Oh, and the monkeys. Fuck the monkeys.
I've always liked the monster within idea. I like the zombies being us. It's like zombies are the blue-collar monsters.
Oh, Call of the Dead, how I've missed you. Here we follow the star-studded lineup of Robert Englund, Danny Trejo, Michael Rooker, and Sarah Michelle Gellar as they fight for survival in the cold winters of Siberia. Zombies legend George A. Romero gathered this crew for his film about 935's experiments during the war. Speaking of George, he is an omnipresent force on this map.
He's just standing there, menacingly.
Starting at round 1, he is always following you. He also carries some serious anger issues, so if you so much as look at him wrong, he will chase you from hell and back. Well, as long as there's no water, because once he gets his ice bath, he's gonna calm right down. Just don't stay in there too long with him because you will start to freeze to death. These frozen pools are placed all around the map, severely limiting the areas that you can train in. I actually really like this mechanic. It offers more short-term space when training if you're in a bad spot, but still limits the main area you have to work with. Though George is one beefy boy, carrying 250,000 health per player. Though if you can take him down, you'll be rewarded with a free perk and a death machine. This death machine then becomes a limited use wonder waff if you can complete the Easter egg, which compared to the slightly increased death machine timer you got in Ascension, this is an awesome reward, even more so when you consider that this is the only infinite damage source on this map. There's no other infinite damage wonder weapons here, and this is the first map since Noct to not feature any traps. On the note of wonder weapons, Call of the Dead is actually the first map to feature two unique ones, the Scavenger and VR11. Only one of these is going to be useful for 99% of players, and that's the Scavenger. It is an explosive sniper rifle that will one-shot hordes up to round 44. Then it starts to fall off pretty heavily. PhD is a requirement to make this thing work, or you will take yourself out from the damage. It's a really fun design, but it definitely doesn't reach the same tier of weapon as the Thunder Gun did. The VR11, on the other hand, is basically just a discount monkey bomb. It can be helpful to disarm George quickly when he gets angry, and in co-op it does act as an insta-kill, but that's only when it isn't glitching out, which is quite often. But there is that 1% of players who will use this gun regularly. I don't normally want to talk about high rounds and records in these map reviews, but this recently discovered strat is just insane and I have to at least mention it. Skip to this timestamp on screen if you aren't interested, but I highly recommend checking this out. Okay, so Call of the Dead was thought to be hard set as the only non-survival map that had a record below round 100. This is because for the map's entire history, there was no strat fast enough to get higher than the 90s before hitting the reset point. If you don't know what that is, basically, after a certain amount of hours inside of the map, it hits its entity limit and causes the game to reset back to round 1. Then, a couple months ago, the absolute legend, a high rounder known as Hemetrix, made a random chance discovery that changed everything about the map. He figured out that if you shoot zombies through a window with the VR11, it glitched out all of the zombies around it. Then they will eventually bleed out and not respawn. Later, it was found out that you can do the same thing by just simply rebuilding the barrier. Then we need to reset the zombies to get back behind the window. You run around the map long enough to despawn all of the zombies and get back to the window before they come back. There will be stragglers, but you just kill that with the VR11. This eventually got more and more optimized to the point where the current record sits at 105, opposed to the previous record of 93, and the theoretical max at the time, which was 96. Now, this was a pretty shallow dive on the mechanics of it all. If you're interested in more about how it works, below I linked a video from Wonderful, an awesome zombies YouTuber who does a much better job at explaining it than I have. Alright, back to the map itself. Call of the Dead's upgrade system is simple, containing the first moving pack-a-punch that randomly appears in one of 3 locations marked by the lighthouse. These are pretty tight corners of the map, making it a decent risk to go get your gun upgraded. On top of the aforementioned lighthouse sits a brand new perk, Deadshot Daiquiri. And as far as Deadshot goes, don't buy it. Seriously, it does nothing useful. On console, your aim assist goes up to the head instead of the chest. Then on PC, it ever so slightly decreases spread of hipfire. So yeah, it's just not worth it. Don't buy it. Ever. Just get better aim. Hop down from the Deadshot Daiquiri perk location, which you hopefully didn't buy, and you'll find a pretty solid training spot. But the map is not any easier because of it. Most people are not getting to or past round 50 on this map, though I actually think that's a good thing. After the honestly quite easy Kino and Ascension maps, this was a great breath of life into the Zombies mode, providing a challenging playground for players. Moving on from just the gameplay, this map has what I would consider the first modern Easter egg. The steps aren't overly complicated, minus the dial step, but thankfully we have Codename Pizza for that. It gives a fantastic reward of all perks and the Wonder Waff for taking down George. Unlike Ascension, Treyarch made this quest doable solo, something that they for some reason didn't do again consistently until BO3, but that's besides the point. All these factors together make Call of the Dead an S-tier map, and in my opinion, the best Black Ops 1 has to offer. It does have some minor issues with the fog being pretty annoying, and honestly the setup is pretty tedious, but together it has created some of the most creative gameplay and environments we have seen in Zombies even today. In American English, Shangri-La is defined as an imaginary paradise of beauty and tranquility, but in COD Zombies it is defined as hell on earth. If players thought 5 or Call of the Dead were hard, buckle up because Shang takes everything to another level. Oh, Call of the Dead has at least one training spot? Take that away because Shang does not have a single easy spot to train in the entire map. Almost every area on this map is just wide enough for you and 1 or 2 other zombies to walk through at a time. If the lack of space wasn't enough, this map forgoes having boss rounds, instead spawning 2 new enemy types at random intervals. The first is the Shrieker, a loud little guy who screams so much your entire screen will start to blur. Then we have the Napalm Zombie, an explosive menace who, if their bomb doesn't take you out, will leave fire that cuts off an entire path for a period of time. I hate these things so much. If you don't have PhD, the napalm can often sneak up behind you and one-shot you, and losing my vision while training is the most infuriating thing possible in Zombies. On top of all of that, the wonder weapon barely works on these guys because they recover from it so quickly. What is that wonder weapon, you might ask? Well, it's the 3179 JGB 215, or as most people call it, the Baby Maker. Pause. Power aside, it's probably one of my favorite weapons in terms of design and creativity. The developers surely downed a handful of shrooms while thinking it up, and I am totally here for it. It is strong. It makes every zombie you hit teeny tiny and takes their max health down to 1 HP. And technically it does no damage, but you can fire one explosive shot into the horde and kill everyone. Or you can pull a South Park and
kick the baby! Don't kick the baby. Kick the baby.
The main weapon you're going to want to use with it is the Mustang and Sally's. So how do we upgrade on this map? Well, on solo, it's as simple as walking up, finding one stone to stand on, and the stairs will open up for you. But on co-op, it's the same thing, scaled with the number of players. This is all and well if you're playing with friends or people with mics, but in an open match, there might as well be no pack-a-punch on this map, because there is no chance in hell you are getting 4 random players to all get on these stones at the same time to unlock it. Okay, so I feel like I've been pretty negative, but I really do love this map. The Easter egg is the best so far, even though it can't be done in solo. It explores the concept of cycles, which, if you know anything about the zombie storyline, is going to come up quite often. You have to work together with 2 explorers, Brock and Gary, to try and get them to safety, but my god, they are so good at getting themselves killed. This map's entire identity is challenge. There's not a single moment you can catch your breath once it gets going. And while I complained about a lot of the various unfair aspects, that's exactly what makes the map so fun. I love how it makes me think on my feet constantly. I can't just get comfortable training in one spot like I can even in maps like 5 and Call of the Dead. And that's not even mentioning the fact that this is the most eye-pleasing map in the game. Unlike the dark colors of Kino, the vibrant greenery of the forest create a pleasant atmosphere to contrast the head-pounding gameplay. All in all, Shang is not a map that I can play often. My blood pressure would give me a stroke. But much like the paint thinner huffed by the developers before making Dead Ops Arcade, it's pretty fun to go back to every so often.
Here at Call of Duty Zombie Labs, we have the world's foremost zombie experts, working tirelessly to develop and perfect zombie killing techniques.
Loading into Moon, you'll notice one important thing. You aren't on the moon. On top of that, you have access to Pack-a-Punch plus Jug or Speed Cola already. At first, this is great. You have a wide open space to walk around in and farm points on these weak level 1 zombies. Then suddenly they all take steroids and start sprinting at you with super high HP, all while hellhounds begin nipping at your heels. This is Area 51, and it's not the starting room, it's a challenge room. If you have the skill, you can get your gun Pack-a-Punched and leave with Jug, but that is a tall task, so most of you will end up just farming that 2,500 points and getting the hell out of Dodge. I adore this system. While you could argue it kills progression, Moon has a unique layout and design that ends up balancing everything out in the end, and it's not easy to do. If you're able to farm up those 5k points using your knife and grenade, then honestly, you deserve the Mustang and Sally's at round 1. Now, hop on that teleporter and you'll get sent to the real first room and begin round 1. Oh, you can't breathe? Well, that's because most of this map has no atmosphere, and all of it when the power's off, so you best grab that PES if you want to make it through. In contrast to the Area 51 system, this is a tedious and unfun mechanic, but that's Moon in a nutshell. One great mechanic is almost always followed up by one annoying one. As you get the power on and progress through the map, you'll probably run into the Hacker, a new equipable item that allows you to change the game to your benefit, for a fee that is. This can do anything from give you a box hit at any location to changing a power up into a max ammo. This is an awesome device that is hampered by the fact that you can't use it and the PES at the same time. So basically, Treyarch forces you to choose between fun or the ability to breathe, which is simply unfun. And speaking of unfun, the main purpose of the Hacker is to stop the excavators from removing massive chunks of the map from being playable. If you're late in stopping a tunnel from getting hit, well, that's just too bad, because now that section of the map is permanently decompressed, meaning you will always need the PES to make it through it. On the note of decompression, if you did manage to get those Mustang and Sally's from the start, you quickly realize that explosives are a no-go on this map. If you use them in any room that has a window, 9 out of 10 times, you're going to decompress it. Again, this is a mechanic that doesn't really add that much skill. It just prevents you from using an entire fun class of weapons, and that takes away from another good aspect of the map. One weapon that you can safely use is the new wonder weapon, the Zap Guns. If the Winter's Howl was the Wish version of the ray gun, the Zap Gun is the Gucci ray gun. They have high ammo count and infinite damage. The only issue is that you can only kill one zombie at a time, but that issue is overcome when you combine them, making the Wave Gun. While the baby gun is my favorite BO1 wonder weapon, the wave gun is objectively the best and pretty much the thunder gun's handsome, more talented younger brother. Added into the box alongside the zap gun is the QED, or quantum entanglement device, which is just the game throwing out the random bullshit attack meme that you see from Moon Knight. On the screen is a vast list of things it can do, ranging from spawning a perk bottle to a ray gun that shoots and kills the player. This isn't a good alternate grenade, but I love that it's here. That's simply for the chaos it can add to the game when you're using it to mess with your friends. So when you're playing seriously, you'll pretty much never have the QEDs since the Gersh device makes a return and it takes the same slot. It feels a lot more balanced on this map compared to Ascension, since Moon is just generally more difficult and has a lot less open space. And most of the open space that this map does have is located in the Biodome. This is the centerpiece of Moon, and it's the best place to train and can only be decompressed by the excavator, not through any player action. Though, like all things in Moon, we can't simply just have good things. Located at various points inside the dome are launch pads that will send the player across the room. This doesn't sound too bad until you realize that it's super imprecise on where it lands you, so if you don't have either Jug or PhD, this will probably happen. And there's a good chance you won't have Jug all the time, because Treyarch once again chose to go with an enemy who's always spawning instead of a boss round. This comes in the form of the Astronaut. They're slow moving and high HP, but if they do catch you and you're taken down to 1 HP and you lose a random perk, once in an open area you likely won't get caught, but it can happen quite often in tight hallways and it's pretty annoying. This really wouldn't be too bad of a mechanic if it wasn't for the fact that Jug and Speed Cola are so difficult to get back. Since they alternate inside of Area 51, you might have to take 2 separate trips, which takes several rounds to get the perk you want back. This does lead to more skill expressions, sometimes forcing you to play without Jug on higher rounds, but really it just feels more frustrating than satisfying when you do it. Alongside the Astronaut as an alternate enemy type, the Nova Crawlers show up again, but this time with a twist. They've learned instant transmission. Since they only show up in one area of the map, you won't have to deal with them too often, but they're a lot more challenging in this map compared to previous appearances. We do have one new perk for this DLC, and that's Mule Kick. Players were asking for a 3-gun perk for years, always looking for glitches that would allow you to get just that. Though, when it did come out, people didn't use it. 4,000 points is a steep ask when added to the points it also takes to upgrade and spin for that 3rd gun. And unlike the glitches, you'll lose the gun when going down, which is very frustrating. But if we're being real, Moon isn't remembered for all these gameplay elements. The Easter egg takes center stage here. In Call of the Dead, you collected a golden rod, and in Shang, we combined that with a mythical object known as the focusing stone. So if you've completed both of these, you can now create the Garthan device and complete the Moon quest. So far, the story of Easter eggs have been pretty low stakes, so Moon would probably follow suit. We blow up the Earth. Yeah, this is where the storyline goes nuts. Richtofen's grand plan is revealed, swapping bodies with Samantha and taking full control over the zombies. Then, to stop him, Samantha's dad takes over the computer and tricks us into straight up nuking the Earth. This egg is perfect for Moon, because while it has a lot of great steps, like showing the first time in Cez game, which is now iconic, it also has awful steps that require you to spin the box 200 times to get all 3 of the map's special items, then wait 20 rounds for a tunnel to get destroyed. Can you tell I'm a little conflicted on this map? The ending does make up for these problem steps though, because players lost their mind over the destruction of the planet, which instantly began the hype train for the next Zombies game, wondering where it would go. And like I said, I'm conflicted on Moon. On one hand, it has a top tier story and some really cool ideas, but it feels like whenever it takes a step forward, it takes an equal step back, just stuck in place. Because of that, I can't say this map reaches any higher peaks than being a mid-tier map and a disappointment gameplay-wise. I go back and play it sometimes, but normally that just reminds me why I tend to avoid it. With this final DLC, Treyarch also remastered all 4 World at War maps. They're nice to have, but they're functionally not very different from their original counterparts, just with the BO1 engine and guns. And notably, a Wonder Weapon is added into Nacht and Verrückt, plus Mule Kick is added in not only these 4 maps, but every single other Black Ops 1 map, but that's pretty much all there is about it. They're nice to have, but not really that big of an addition. Well, we've covered every single map, so with all of that being said, does Black Ops 1 stand the test of time as a top-tier Zombies game? Unfortunately, no, it doesn't. Okay, look, I have so many fantastic memories of playing this game as a kid, so I really wanted to say it was just that good. And I think in maps like Call of the Dead, it does rival any newer game, but it's just too inconsistent to put in the same tier as Black Ops 2 or 3. At the time of its release, it was an S-tier experience in game, and that mixed with hardcore nostalgia is why many people think it's still one of the best. Without both the success and shortcomings of Black Ops 1, we would never have had the peaks we saw in later games, so for that it's still extremely important. It set the basis of the storyline and was willing to take massive risks in each map, which is something that Black Ops 2 based its entire philosophy off of. And that's what we're going to be taking a look at in our next retrospective, analyzing and discussing the golden age of Zombies innovation, Black Ops 2. Subscribe so that you don't miss it, and I do hope to see you there. And one last note, I did want to start adding a ranking for each map in the game and adding them to one massive list as we go through these retrospectives. So here are my rankings for both Black Ops 1 and World at War. Notably, we have our first S tier map with Call of the Dead, and I would imagine I have Kino a lot lower than most might. I don't know, I'm not a big fan of vanilla ice cream. Okay, thank you so much for watching if you're still here, it really means a lot, and I'll see you next time.